Vice Chair, Councillor McLaren, Councillor Osanek, and Councillor Turner. And members of staff that are here tonight include our Commissioner Hurdle and Manager Vendetti. And we have a number of planning staff, starting on my right. Planner Bolton, Lambert, Planner Dietrichson, Planner Sands, and Planner Seabat. And our clerk is Clerk O'Shea. And I will get started by reading our public meeting introduction, as we have a number of public meetings this evening. Personal information collected as a result of this public hearing and in the forms provided at the back of the room is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments may be collected and may form part of the minutes, which will be available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning, Building, and Licensing Services. The purpose of public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant, committee members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be opened to the public for comments and questions. Interested persons are requested to give their name and address for recording in the minutes. There is also a sign-in sheet for interested members of the public at the back of the room. No decisions are made at public meetings concerning applications unless otherwise noted. The public meeting is held to gather public opinion. Exemption to this rule is outlined in bylaw number 2006-75 to delegate various planning approvals to staff and to adopt certain procedures for the processing of planning applications subject to delegated authority. Council has authorized staff to use discretion in determining if an application can be a combined public meeting comprehensive report to expedite the approval process. Information gathered at public meetings is then referred back to Planning, Building, and Licensing Services staff for the preparation of a comprehensive report and recommendation to Planning Committee. This means that after the meeting tonight, staff will be considering the comments made by the public in their further review of the applications. When this review is completed, a report will be prepared making a recommendation for action to this committee. The recommendation is typically to approve with conditions or to deny. The committee then makes a recommendation on the applications to City Council. City Council has the final say on the applications from the city's perspective. Following council decision, notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act, and anyone with an interest in the matter may file an appeal. Interested persons are advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council to the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. And with that, I will open our first public meeting, which is an application for zoning bylaw amendment.
Sorry, quick point of order,
Yes.
if I might. I just received a text from Councillor Holland in PEI sending her regrets, saying she forgot to send them. So if we could record her as regrets. Thank you.
Thanks. So it's zoning bylaw amendment application 299303 Concession Street.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Jennifer Guerra. I'm a planner with Foten Consultants, and I'm pleased to present an application for zoning bylaw amendment for 299 to 303 Concession Street on behalf of the owner. And the purpose of this zoning amendment is to permit a wider range of uses within the existing office building at the property. 299 to 303 Concession Street is the area outlined in blue on this aerial image. It's 0.54 hectares in size, so about an acre and a half, and it's occupied currently by a 3-story office building. Concession Street, as I'm sure many of you know, it diverges between Princess and Leroy Grant Drive, and this property is in between the eastbound and the westbound lanes of Concession Street. It has about 106 meters or 350 feet of frontage on both sides. Vehicle access is provided from the south, so from the eastbound lanes of Concession Street, There are 117 parking spaces. They're all located at grade. And the surrounding context is quite mixed in terms of uses and densities. To the west and to the east are other similar office buildings, as well as some convenience commercial uses. To the south are some commercial uses as well. You have the beer store right across the street, and also some low-density residential uses located on Drayton Avenue. And then to the north, we have high-density residential uses in the form of 4 taller apartment buildings, so quite a mix of uses in this area. These are a few photos of the existing office building. It's 3 stories tall. The 2 photos on the top are the front view, so looking north if you're in the eastbound lanes of Concession Street. And the 2 photos on the bottom are the back of the property if you're looking south from the westbound lanes of Concession Street. The property is currently zoned C2 218. This is an existing site-specific arterial commercial zone. It was approved back in 2011, and the purpose was to permit the construction of a new 4-story office building, which would be located in the west side of the property, which is currently a parking lot. This site-specific zoning recognized a variety of reliefs in order to accommodate that second building, including setbacks, relief in lot occupancy, the height, gross floor area, parking, loading. And it was determined through that process that the site didn't have enough parking in order to support the full range of C2 uses, especially once the new building was constructed. So the permitted uses through the site-specific zone were restricted to 2. 1, office, but not including medical or dental office or clinic, and 2, a daycare, because the parking demand of these uses and of these uses alone could be met on the site. Fast forward 6 years, and the property is under new ownership, and that second office building was never constructed. The current owner doesn't intend to build that second office building. Instead, they are looking to essentially reinstate that permission for the full range of C2 uses, and also the ability to have office uses, medical office uses, and dental office uses in clinics. So this is a concept plan of the site, which is our proposal, but it's also the existing situation. So this is how the site looks today, and the proposal wouldn't necessitate any physical changes. It would essentially allow a different and wider range of uses within that current building. The property is designated arterial commercial in the official plan, and the arterial commercial designation is it's a special purpose designation for a specialized range of goods and services. And it's intended to accommodate things like hospitality uses, automotive uses, restaurants for the traveling public, and uses that need bigger sites on major arterial roads that need a lot of space for outdoor storage. And generally, office uses aren't permitted with the exception of if they're accessory to that arterial commercial use, or if they're in line with the policies of section 3.4.E.3. And what that policy set essentially says is it recognizes that the city has these existing older commercial strip plazas that currently contain a mix of office, retail, and service uses, and that they've developed over time along arterial roads and within the arterial designation. And the OP recognizes these sites and allows the zoning bylaw to recognize and permit a wider range of uses. And this is certainly one of those sites along Concession Street that represents one of those pre-existing, long-standing mixed-use commercial strip plazas within an arterial designation. So what we're looking to do through the rezoning is update the current site-specific zone in order to permit all those C2 uses once more, and also to add medical office or clinic and also dental office or clinic. The C2 zone limits the amount of office space to 605 square meters per building in this zone. And this is because office uses in the arterial designation area are intended to be secondary to or accessory to the main arterial use. So because this is a pre-existing purpose-built office building, it doesn't really make sense to keep that cap on area. And as a matter of fact, the existing office building exceeds that max already by more than 4 times. So we're proposing to remove that restriction on area. And finally, the current parking ratios, they reflect what was required for that previously proposed office building, the second building. So we're proposing a new ratio of 1 space per 23 square meters, which essentially recognizes the existing situation. To summarize, this proposed rezoning would not see any new development on the site. It would reinstate a wider range of uses within the existing building consistent with what it would have been pre-2011. It will improve the site's flexibility, which will in turn support a wider range of economic activities, and this proposal meets the official plan policies with respect to existing strip plazas within the arterial commercial designation. And with that, I welcome any questions or comments.
Thank you. And could we hear from staff, please?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Notice of this public meeting was given in accordance with the Planning Act, and to date, we have not received any inquiries or correspondence with respect to the application. Any comments that are received will be reviewed by staff and addressed in the comprehensive report. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Questions from the committee? Councillor Neal?
Just very quickly, there is an existing retail corner store on the site, I believe. Is that right? Or am I wrong?
There is a corner store not on this property, but
on
within,
the neighboring.
it's 2 doors down, I
Okay.
think, yes.
Okay. Representing just the other side of the street, but there's a lot of development going on. And the towers that you have mentioned, medical dental use, I think, is a logical thing. So, but I look forward to hearing from the community. Thank you.
Councillor Osanek?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was on Planning Committee in 2011, so I remember that application. I remember the concern for parking. And right now, I think my concern is still parking. Like, I drive by it every morning. I know it's government offices, right? That's where Service Canada is, and some Ministry of Ontario offices. Of the 117 parking spots for the office staff, how many are currently being used?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. I don't have an exact number. I can certainly get back to you with rates of demand. What I can say is that the professional office rate for parking is higher than the rate for medical or dental office. So should medical or dental offices occupy some or a lot of this building, that demand will actually decrease from the existing situation. But I would be happy to find some numbers on what the existing uptake is of the parking.
Do you foresee that if it is a medical or dental clinic, that there would be reserved parking for the patients of those clinics in the parking lot here with the layout that is there?
Yes, certainly. So currently the parking lot includes both visitor and permit parking. So a substantial amount of the lot is dedicated from a leasing perspective to the different users of the building. So if a medical or dental office or clinic were to occupy this space, the owner could work with them to determine what their needs are and establish a certain proportion of the parking lot that could be dedicated to those users.
Yeah, I just don't want to see any of the office workers lose their parking spot because of this new permitted use. I know that south of there is Williamsville, and as of September 1st, there can't be any on-street parking right without a permit. So if someone, say there was an office worker who loses their parking spot, they now can't do on-street parking without purchasing a city permit. And I'm not sure if Leroy Grant Drive, can you park free along those 2 apartment buildings just north of this site?
I believe those parking permit plan is being phased in, so it's not happening in the northwest corner immediately. So, but it could happen in the future. And then it would be a need for the purchase of parking permits.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, I'd like to open this to members of the public. We have microphones on either side, and you're welcome to come up and give opinions, ask questions, give your name and address, please, and limit the time to 5 minutes. And I'm seeing no uptake, so I will thank you for your presentation and close the first public meeting. Thank you. And our second public meeting is 194 Mack Street zoning bylaw amendment, and I have a conflict, so Councillor Neal is going to take over this public meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. And I will turn it over to the planner.
Thank you. My name is Mike Keane, and I'm a land use planner with Foten Consultants. And I'm here tonight to present to you an application for a zoning bylaw amendment on a vacant lot at 194 Mack Street. So this property is located on Mack Street between Macdonell and Toronto Street, which generally is a low-density neighborhood in really quite central in terms of its location to Williamsville, even really somewhat toward downtown, and to, you know, parks, to Queens, to express transit routes, and those types of things are all in close proximity to this site. As I noted, the site itself is a vacant lot. It's a long-standing rarity, I would say, in this neighborhood. A vacant parcel of land within an area that has a mix of low and medium density residential uses. And the lower picture just kind of shows the white outline approximately of the property. The top picture shows 164 Toronto Street, which is the two-story single detached dwelling, and the property is directly behind this building. And then you can see in both the top picture and the lower picture the two-story multi-use dwellings that are on Mack Street. The top picture here is an existing daycare. So the vacant site that we're proposing the triplex on is essentially where my hand cursor is moving. And then across the street from the daycare is this mixed-use building as well, Queens Convenience. So the proposal that's before the committee tonight is a request for a zoning amendment to allow a two-story triplex dwelling unit. And the dwelling would be serviced from Mack Street in terms of the services that the city would require, as well as where driveway access would be provided. This is an image of the proposal. And these developers, in terms of other product that they've developed, if you know, there are quite a few that of various models that they've built now. But in terms of giving you a sample of what they build, the one that comes to mind is like 705 King Street in Portsmouth Village, which has the cement siding and the stone, and you can see that this would be a similar quality of building proposed here. The units themselves, it's a triplex, so the proposal would be three roughly 1,150 square foot, 3-bedroom units, and they're all identical in terms of the layout, in terms of having a combined kitchen living area, and then 3 separate bedrooms. All the units have access through the front door on Mack Street, and they also all have access out the back to the backyard. The property itself within the official plan is within a housing district. It's within a residential designation, and within those designation, minor infill is allowed. This application was filed under the 2010 official plan. You're going to see probably quite a few applications like this that are just in that transitional period. But in looking at the 2010 plan, we found that it conformed. I've also just briefly touched on the new official plan, which policies in the housing districts are quite similar, but there is more of a bent on assisting with ensuring suitable infill development. And this building at 3 units would actually rate as high density. And it's just sheerly, math over area that creates that. So when I look at this in terms of a high density perspective, I'm seeing a housing form that's a triplex that I would generally consider a low density housing form. And when I look at the surrounding uses, which have other multifamily units that are larger, a daycare, a convenience store, I still feel that this policy conforms in the 2017 context as well. Looking from a zoning perspective, the current property is zoned A, which permits 1 and 2 family dwellings. So to allow a triplex, an amendment is necessary. What is being requested is an amendment that would address reliefs related to setback, density, lot area coverage, and the arrangement of the parking. And I'll speak to this in a moment. And because we went from an A to a B zone, we introduced bicycle parking, and we were originally seeking relief from the bicycle parking, but in receiving some of the public comments and in speaking with my client, we're simply going to provide a bicycle parking shed at the back of the building. And again, if you've seen what's provided at 705 King, it's a good example of what we would provide here on this property as well. So I'm just going to flip back to this issue to kind of speak a little bit to the zoning. So in terms of some of the relief that we're seeking, it's a lot of it is to do with better orienting the building on the site. So in this case, we want to bring the building closer to the street, which provides a deeper backyard, more in keeping with a better private amenity space. 3 parking spaces are required, and you can see that what we have is enough room to have 4 cars when 3 is required. So the relief that's required is for the tandem arrangement, because that, although that's allowed in other areas of the city, it's not allowed in this bylaw. So we need an amendment to allow that. In terms of amenity space, what would be required for this example now that the new bylaw is in effect is 55 meters of amenity space, 18.5 meters per unit. And this actually has a backyard that's over 200 square meters of space. So it's quite a nice backyard. The lot is 19 meters wide. So in just summarizing the application now, in my review, I find it to be consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforming to the official plan that this application applies to, which is the 2010, but it also conforms to the new policies that are updating some of those policies. And the zoning amendment is appropriate because it is one that will recognize a built form that is consistent with those uses that also exist in the neighborhood. It's under 1,200 square footprint. It's not a large building, and some of those critical areas that we are constantly struggling with are actually met in terms of parking and amenity for this site. So I'm pleased to address any questions committee or the public may have.
Thank you very much. I'll let staff make their opening comments.
Through you, Mr. Chair, notice was provided in accordance with the Planning Act, and to date we've received 3 pieces of correspondence. 2 should be in the agenda and then another in the addendum, and all will be addressed as part of the comprehensive report.
Thank you very much. Any member of the committee wish to make a comment? Would somebody like to take the chair just for 2 quick questions?
I take the chair and I recognize you.
Thank you. I guess I have two concerns. I've seen some of the other developments, and I know this area very well, and it's going to look good in the neighborhood when it's built. I guess my prime concern, I'm not familiar anywhere in Williamsville where there's a by right stacked parking allowed. And I'm just curious as to how you might address that for tenant concerns. I applauded before I looked at the drawing, the fact that you were in fact had 4 parking spaces for nine bedrooms, which is even better than our per bedroom kind of calculations. Could you comment on how one goes about getting that kind of easement from your neighbors?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it'll be a rental unit because it's a triplex, so it's not one that's proposed to be condominiumed and sold. So by leaving it in a rental arrangement, you have a higher power that is going to control where people park. And, you know, certainly tandem arrangements can be challenging. What we've found in some of the other projects is it was a question of we had enough space to put parking in, or do we do a parking study to reduce it to 2 and make the parking shorter? In this situation, we simply made a judgment call that requesting an amendment for the stacked arrangement probably made sense because they're 3-bedroom units. They're a unit style that is, could have a wider range of interest. Looking at other projects that this client has done, their parking uptake is actually almost 0. So, but at the same time, one of their units has people that are working on the hospital. So there are people from out of town that are renting the apartment, and as a result, there's actually a few cars there. So depending on, the uptake, will really result in how the arrangement is dealt with. But the parking is 6 meters wide when 2.7 plus 2.7 is required. So there is a little wiggle room in terms of, if somebody has to leave an hour before another. And it's something that's been done regularly. So, I suppose I could check to see how those arrangements are working, but it was an arrangement that we thought would be appropriate for this scale.
Thank you. My last comment, and it may be staff, it may be you that wish to address this. Your immediate neighbor is a long-standing daycare that have been in the neighborhood a long time, and I know their playground area is just on the other side of the fence. Through site plan and through engaging the owners of that daycare, are you confident that you'll be able to address any concerns? Because that's just on the other side of those automobiles, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And for first clarification, it's 3 units, so it wouldn't actually be subject to site plan here. There is a long-standing fence that exists, and we did waffle with the idea of flopping the parking to the other side, but then this is really central to the block, and we felt, even though it is abutting the daycare, it is fenced, we felt that the parking at this location was ultimately safer than if it was closer to the intersection, given that 164 Toronto Street has its driveway also right there. So I think, I could say the daycare was circulated this application, and maybe there's someone in the room, and so if there is a concern, I know my client is very active in reaching out, and if there's bigger fence necessary, those are the kinds of things we'll be happy to deal with.
I think that would be a very good new neighbor approach.
Yes.
To talk to them, since site plan isn't a requirement.
They may have already spoken to them. I'm not sure of that. But.
Great, I appreciate that. Thank you. And we'll now open it to the public, if any member of the public wishes to ask a question. Staff, I believe, have already commented on this, so we're now,
Frank Dixon, 495 Alfred, apartment 2, K7K, 4J4. So I live a few blocks from the site and walk by there quite often, so I know the neighborhood. Thank you for your presentation. Following up on what Councillor Neal was discussing, my idea was that maybe you could have a modification of where the building is on the site. If you were to move a little bit to the west and keep 2 parking spots on the west side, and then we have enough room for another one on the east side as well, so that you would be getting away from the interference tandem arrangement. People coming and going, you may have issues with visitor parking and that kind of thing. People on different schedules. I've lived in places that have had this, and it can be inconvenient. So that's just my feedback. I think the design fits fairly well in the neighborhood. It's not too big. It's a quiet neighborhood, fairly mature. People who live there really like it. A very high quality of life, a lot of parks nearby, transit is close, walk to shopping. So it's really a nice area to live. So otherwise, I support the project and hope it goes well. Thank you.
thank you. Any further members of the public? Seeing none, thank you very much. This public meeting is now closed, and I will pass the chair back.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. And now I would like to open the next public meeting, our final public meeting, which is 575 to 611 Princess Street and 510 Frontenac Street, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, and FO10 consultants will be presenting. Thank you.
Ooh. Good evening, councillors, Madam Chair, members of the public, and city staff. My name is Bernard Lutmer from Podium Developments. I'm here with Jake Murray and Mike from our planning team at FO10. We're here today to present to you a revised application for a development at 575 Princess Street. Many of you may have recalled it was almost a year ago when we had our first public meeting, and we're here today to share with you all of the changes that we've done to the plan over the last several months. We're not here today to fight the existing policy. We're here to build within the policy and try to achieve the guiding principles of the Williamsville study. Specifically, for those who may not have been at the first meeting, just to give you a brief overview of the site location. It is a very important location in the city of Kingston, centered in the center of the community destination area of Williamsville, and it is directly between Memorial Park and Victoria Park. It encompasses an entire city block between Albert Street and Frontenac Street. The previous application included a property on the south side of Princess Street for surface parking and an existing residential development to the north. Some of the comments we received back was that surface parking along Princess Street was not according to the official plan. So the revised application that's before you today removes the parking at grade, and we've also removed the existing site from the application. So you're looking at just the new building application. Simplifies things a lot for people to understand. We've also removed the corner parcel from the application in hopes that this piece would be a dedication for parkland, so we could create a city parkette in that location through parkland dedication and the community benefit program. Again, the old and the new application boundaries that we're talking about. Existing conditions, this is Frontenac Street, the church that exists today and will remain after the development. And this is Albert Street. You can see the edge of the existing development and the underutilized site on Princess Street. So to give you, again, the project history, we had a submission in June 2016, which included an 11-story building with moderate transition to the neighborhood and 456 units and 172 parking spots, which included on-site parking and off-site parking. We had a public meeting in October, and we heard from a lot of you. We heard from the public, we heard from councillors, and we heard from the members of council that we needed to make changes. So today we're here to show you all the changes we've made to improve and address your concerns. So specifically, we heard a lot of feedback that needed improvement. The height was a concern, the rear transition was a concern, density was a concern, parking, traffic, amenity space, and overall architectural design. So it has been a while since we were here because we've been doing a lot of work. It's taken a long time to get back to this place today, but we believe we've addressed every single one of the comments we received last year, and we're going to go through those changes today. So first and foremost, height. There was a lot of concern about the official plan amendment for height. We had an 11-story building and it was over 40 meters high. The revised application has been significantly improved. It's now 10 stories. We no longer need an official plan amendment for height, and it is, more importantly, 30 meters high. So we've reduced height significantly from the previous application. The transition. We heard concern about the way the building transitioned to the neighborhood. You can see the old elevation in comparison to the existing church. We did have a transition to 6 stories, but it ended there. There was no additional step backs into the neighborhood. The new plan has additional steps and comes all the way down to a 4-story structure adjacent to the church. The density, there was a concern. We had 456 units in the last proposal. We've reduced 85 units in this proposal and have come back with 371 units. There was also a lot of concern about that on-site parking issue. We did have more than 130, but many of them were off-site. So we've increased the on-site parking significantly, over 50%, to 194 spots for this development. That added parking brings us to a ratio that our parking study recommends, and a ratio that this council has approved in the past with other developments in this area. So we're confident it's the right approach. We heard specifically from Councillor Neal, there was a great recommendation in the Williamsville study to have laneways in the back that connected through behind developments, and the previous application dead-ended and did not extend through. We were able to cut the footprint of the building back and create a laneway all the way through the development, which will ease traffic concerns and also continue to provide access so that all the parking and loading can be in the rear of the building, which is important. Amenity space. We heard, especially from city staff who have been working extremely hard on a revised amenity bylaw for the city, which I believe recently came into effect. It was important to them and important to the development that we met the amenity requirements under the new zoning bylaw for amenity. This proposal now exceeds that, and we actually had to increase amenity by 68%. So we added a lot of square footage, and we now have over 40,000 square feet of amenity in this building. So it will be spectacular for the residents, and we're really excited to deliver that to the new building. We heard through the community a concern about the architecture. There was originally proposed a 4-story stone and masonry base with aluminum panels and glass above that. We heard a desire for more traditional building materials. I believe what we heard was that contemporary architecture is fine, but Kingston really has an affinity for the masonry veneer. So the changes we made were the upper floors above the stone base are now also brick. We've just done a lighter brick above and then continued the clear glass above that. We heard concern over the unit types, the mix of unit types, and back bedrooms. So these are legal bedrooms that use borrowed light, but there was a concern we had a lot of them, and the quality of those units may not be to the same level that they otherwise could be. So in the previous application, we had approximately 120 of these rooms that were in the back and didn't have direct access to sunlight. Those have all been eliminated, and we've redesigned the 2 bedrooms so that they have direct access to the light and fresh air on the front. We've also rebalanced the mix of units. There was concern that we had too many bachelors and studios or one type of unit in the building. We've added diversity in the unit types. We have continued to provide a lot of bachelors and studios because the facts on the ground is that no one has built studios and bachelors in Kingston of substantial amount in the last decade. So the city desperately needs these smaller units, so we still are doing a lot of small units, but we've balanced the building accordingly. So that summarizes, fundamentally all the major changes that we've made to the plan, which we think are significant and greatly improve the plan before the city for consideration. I do also want to just quickly highlight, because those were the changes, but there are a lot of great things we've done with this project. We've worked very hard with the city and the community to ensure that it meets the Williamsville Main Street study. So I do want to take a few minutes just to highlight the guiding principles of that report. There were 7 guiding principles, and we believe strongly that this project fits within those guiding principles. The study itself, an important document that was formed with community input across, I recognize a lot of the faces in the room tonight because we were at those meetings, helping build the vision for this area of town. So I can speak, each guiding principle we've addressed. So the first one is ensuring community vitality through mixed uses at grade. And we've done that carefully in this project. So we have reduced the amount of commercial space in this revised application, but we did that to create that vitality. So we've created 2 premium commercial units on either end of the development that spill out to outdoor space that is available. And then in the center of the building, we've created a sort of an animated lobby with amenity space for the building that's interactive to the street. So we really believe this will be a great project to create animation in Williamsville. The second guiding principle is to improve the pedestrian and cycling experience along Princess Street. And this project will do that extremely well. Right now, you have an underutilized site with multiple entrances off of Princess for vehicles to drive in and interrupt someone who would be walking or biking down Princess Street. This project moves all of those entrances off of Princess Street, creates a beautiful street wall with the right height, 4-story street wall, for there to be great interaction with the cyclists and walkers down Princess Street. The third guiding principle would be to identify opportunities to green the public and private realm. We're very excited about this. We had a call earlier today with one of our neighbors about this, and we are fortunate enough to be in between 2 of the streets that were identified to be green boulevards that connect Memorial Park to Victoria Park. And this is a picture of Frontenac Street, where we have set the building back further than the minimum requirement from the boulevard to allow for 2 rows of trees to be planted on either side of the sidewalk along Frontenac Street. We've also shown here our vision to create a parkette at the corner of Frontenac and Princess Street, which will improve, again, greening the public space. And we are committed through site plan process and community engagement to make sure that this happens in an effective manner as we continue. In addition to that, we have green space on the development itself on some of the roofs and setbacks. The 4th guiding principle is the development of appropriate scale and density that's compatible with the street width and neighborhood context. We are very fortunate to have a project that is happening on a consolidated city block that is extremely rare in the center of the community destination in Williamsville. We also have no single-family homes to the north of us adjacent to this property. So this is an excellent location to provide the density that's desperately needed in this community to create the vitality that everyone is seeking. So we, in combination with that context, we've built a project that has the articulation to make it look like three separate buildings as you come along the street, and the mixture of materials to make it look dynamic and interesting when you walk by the property. The fifth guiding principle is to encourage high-quality architecture, and that's representative of the heritage of Williamsville. So we've selected a firm who in 2015 won the award for the best architecture and design consultancy in Canada. So we're bringing highly qualified professionals to help us build this vision out, but we are using our own knowledge of the community to help them understand what the community wants to see. And hence you saw the revisions from their first vision to a revised vision that is before you today. The sixth one is obviously to protect the existing residential areas from negative impacts. We've done a lot of things on this regard. Again, it's a suitable site, but the shadow impacts of this development are minimal. We have the shadow studies; they're provided in our documentation, and they are they do not create a large impact on the neighborhood. We've created transitions. We've created appropriate parking and traffic studies and traffic throughways in the rear of the property to make sure that it eliminates negative impacts to our neighbors. And finally, the seventh guiding principle is to provide a sustainable framework for future development. And this project, on multiple fronts, we think is an excellent example of sustainable development for this community. We will have green roofs, we will have a green parquet, a green tree, we will have a car share program for cars, we will have electric cars, charging stations, we will have an abundance of bicycle parking. Our accessible standards will be second to none, and overall, we think that this scale of project that fits within the Williamsville study will be a great example for future development, and will help encourage the development of this corridor, which is what the goal was when we started this journey. It seems quite a long time ago now. So we're hoping to get moving and build an exciting project very soon. Finally, I'd like to thank the members of the community and councillors and staff for all their comments, because we truly do have a much better project before you today than we did last year, and we look forward to working with you to bring it to fruition. So with that, I open the floor to any questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And could I hear from staff, please?
Certainly. Through you, I'd first like to speak about community benefits. So as the applicant has noted, the scale and density has been reduced from the first submission, but I do want to point out that the density and the height is still above and beyond what we permit within our current regulation. So for that, staff are seeking public input with respect to community benefits in accordance with Section 37 of the Planning Act, along with our enabling policies in the city's official plan. Some of the potential benefits that are outlined in the official plan to date: public art, affordable housing, public transit facilities, etc. I also want to point out that tonight is not the only opportunity for public to provide their ideas for public input. Staff are always welcome. My contact information is contained within the report, and please do send that through at any time. Secondly, I'd like to state that the application was circulated to meet the requirements of the Act, even though it is a second circulation. So that included mailouts to 156 property owners within the 120-meter radius. It also included mailouts and notification of tonight's meeting to all members of the public who signed in and were requested at the first public meeting. Secondly, that included update signage on site, only the site to the north of Princess Street, unlike that of the first public meeting, which included the properties to the south. There was also a courtesy ad placed in the WIG standard. And lastly, there has been some public input received, I would say. 2 written pieces of public correspondence, which were both received today, and they're included in your packages added for tonight. And there were 3 inquiries made by telephone, all of which were addressed by staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, or questions from committee? Councillor Neal.
Thank you. Clearly, I believe you've addressed, as I understand it, every one of the concerns that was brought forward at your initial public meeting. Is there, I know there was some, and you've addressed the setback on Frontenac Street. How is the setback on Princess Street reflected in here? Are you looking for a relief, I believe, in that area? Could you explain that?
Yes, there is still a relief requested in angular plane for the development on Princess Street for that angular plane, correct, yes.
It is definitely improved from the initial, and I'm glad to see every bedroom's going to have a window, and I'm glad to see that the service lane in back is a through lane. I think that improves the site considerably. I'll ask some questions at the end after.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the report. You've done a lot of work. You've taken this project and really changed it, and you've made a lot of great improvements, and I thank you for that. I wanted to know a little bit more about the roofs. Is there a roof terrace, or is it just green roofs?
There's a combination of both. So there's a lot of stepping in the building, and we have both green roofs and terraces, depending what level you're on.
Oh, that's great. That's a great community benefit as well. Okay, that's all for now. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'd like to open the meeting now to members of the public. And again, we have a microphone on this side, and there's one over on this side. If you'd like to come forward, name, address, and comments and opinions. That one would be fine too.
Yes, Carol Wyman. I'm with Princess Street United Church. And I was wondering what your plans are for the southern portion of Princess Street in that area there. Thank you.
And what we'll do is have all the questions, and then we'll ask the proponents to give a comprehensive series of answers. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir. Please come forward. That's fine. Just need to turn on the microphone, the little red button at the bottom.
Thank you very much. Hello, Laurie Kaufman. I'm on Frontenac. I have properties on Frontenac Street. I'm a landlord there. And I must say, first of all, that I love every project that Podium has built in town, mainly because it fits. Besides being beautiful and fitting in with the city, they actually fit within the vast majority of the planning regs and the Williamsville the Williamsville regulations as well. I really quite like this project, and I really want to see something built there. Just to confirm, there's only one major concern. So how many apartments, I was trying to read quickly there, how many apartments and how many bedrooms? Sorry, I get,
We'll total them up at the end. I know.
Okay, all
they
right.
did
So
announce-
just from what I've read quickly, it looks like you're about a third of apartment per unit. A third. Wait a sec. One parking lot for every 3 bedrooms. It looks like. somewhere in that area. So at the end, maybe you can tell me the specific amount. I can tell you from being, I've got, our family has about 80, 90 apartments just up the street on Frontenac Street, and I can tell you that we have a problem with half a parking spot per bedroom. I think, you know, taking a look at the correspondence about the Patry projects across the road from you, you know, they've been looking for a quarter, you know, for one parking spot for every four. As I understand from this email I'm looking at from from planning, the Dillon Consulting on the parking plan was saying that was, you know, wasn't good enough. And I can tell you, you'd really be short. You'd have half the cars out on the street. I really like what you've done as far as all of the bachelors. I think that really is needed, but I think that those people who are going to be going to a newer building and paying the higher rent are going to have cars. So quite honestly, I really do think that the amount of units really has to be regulated by the amount of parking spots, because space is the premium. So the parking spots are going to regulate the amount of apartments that really would fit into the neighborhood. It's got to be, quite honestly, it's got to be one spot for every 2 bedrooms. Plus, there has to be, on top of that, there has to be an allowance for visitor parking and for service parking, because I can tell you that we struggle with that every year. And I think if you can rationalize the parking, then I think I really love. Other than that, I really love what you're doing. Aside from that, and addressing council and planning, I really think that your wonderful presentation made reference to the precedent, which has now been set by the other projects that planning is approved and council rejected. Okay, we have to remember that. Council followed the recommendations that the old planners who were here before this set of planners put the Williamsville area in, and they set up we are a medium-sized city. We need medium-sized density. You have to remember that planning has to go a century forward. In 2040, 2050, populations are going to drop. And so all we have right now is a greed fest. Like all our builders and developers in town were really quite respectful of what the community through developed, and we would have had a wonderful city going forward over the next century. But now, if you and I don't blame you for quoting precedents. I mean, you know, it makes it. But it's the density that we are going to be stuck with in 10 and 15 years when Princess Street is completed, is filled in. You're going to have a ton of empty apartments because Queens is not expanding the way everyone is hoping it will. And I can tell you as a landlord, you know, everyone's fixing up their apartments, which is wonderful. But the old plans we have, you know, that were established up until about 2013 are wonderful. And what is being pushed through now, and what I respect you having to do to, you know, for business reasons, is going to continue. And so that's my little, I'll end my little rant there. But just say that if you can figure out the maximum parking and you make it 2 to 1, that I think that would be minimal, and I can tell you there will be years that you will be wishing you had more. And thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you. We are asking about community benefits. If you have any ideas of something else that could be added to this, that the city could ask for in terms of community benefits. This is just part of the entire meeting. If you have an idea in terms of affordable housing, what were some of the others? Piece of public art, help with public transit. If there's something that you can think of that you would like to see from the developers that would enhance the city, we can ask, since they're asking for increased density. Yes, if you could send a letter, that would be great. Thank you. Please come.
My name is Dave Goche, 523 Frontenac Street, which I guess is the only owner-occupied structure on the first block of Frontenac Street that's shared with the development. I did make a written submission, which I trust that you guys have received. I'd just like to take this opportunity to elaborate a single point, which is related to the community benefits you just mentioned. So I've got serious concerns related to the traffic load north of the development on Frontenac Street and to the safety of my family because of that. Both of these are really, I think, related to the amendments that are on the table. To me, though, there's a really simple solution to mitigate these impacts, and that's no traffic, no issue. I think if the traffic load from the developments don't reach that corner of Frontenac and Jenkins, then the amendments are acceptable. This is a beautiful project. It's a lot better than what's there now, and I think it's fantastic, except for the traffic that could pass that corner. How that's ultimately accomplished, of course, isn't up to me, but I do have some ideas, and I've included those in my written submission, and I hope that you guys will take a close look at those. I also recognize that site plan control is not happening now, and that these kinds of details would normally be sorted out at that time. But I really can't imagine why the city of Kingston, the developers, and their neighbors, that includes all the neighbors, wouldn't sort of immediately engage in a meaningful conceptual discussion about Frontenac Street in general and what community benefits could come to the street associated with this development and others that may be coming on the street. Especially since articulating those community benefits, like, for example, the creation of the Green Street and other associated things, would almost surely lead to support for the development from its closest neighbors, and I count myself as one of those. Wait for site plan control, good things will come. I think that's missing. Let's start that discussion. Let's start that discussion now. I think we actually heard that the developer in their presentation has taken the first steps in this regard. They've included a number of features of the Green Street of Kingston, like the parquet and the double row of trees. And I can tell you that they've begun the engagement, meaningful engagement with their neighbors. And on that note, I'd like to take that opportunity to just thank them for several open and frank discussions that I've had with them about my concerns, which I think were really positive and headed in the right direction. We talked about a general vision for the sort of unified plan of Frontenac Street, provides benefits to all and really answers each of those guiding principles of the Williamsville Main Street study. I guess in closure, I'd urge the Planning Committee and Council to withhold approval of this really fantastic and appropriate application until a plan for managing that traffic load on Frontenac Street is in place. And ideally, it's one that comes under the banner of community benefits. There's a wonderful gap there that we can wedge this issue right into. And the solutions are simple, cheap, easy, and I think would make a really wonderful piece of Williamsville, especially at the start. We're not talking about moving mountains here. I mean, it's like a few trees, some bump outs, and probably a steel gate would probably do it. That, and I think some commitments that those things will actually happen. That's about all it's going to take at this point, I think. Thanks for this opportunity.
Great, thank you. Yes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation and the report. I was at the earlier meeting which dealt with the project, and I agree that it's definitely been improved by a great deal. So thank you for that imagination, the hard work, more expertise, all the time you put in. So I'm impressed with the design as it's currently being presented, whereas I had some concerns before. So I think I was among many who talked about that. Just had a question with respect to the height. Right now you're at 10 stories, and on one of the slides you're showing the elevator, which seems to be on the east side of the structure. So is what the elevator area went up to 11 in that area? Is that an accurate analysis? I'm a little disappointed they didn't have detail on the shadowing in the package the public were talking about. You did discuss it during the presentation, and just with the orientation of the building being on the north side of the street and the sun coming from the south, you're not going to have really an issue with the building casting a shadow across the street, it seems, right? So, but you did have some issues with the shadowing for the project that went to the OMB last fall. So I would really like to see a lot of care put into those studies, and that the details would come to the planning committee at some stage so they could be examined. I'm applauding also, as others have done, the numbers of smaller units that you're planning to build, because I agree that those are definitely needed in Kingston. Okay. Now, my next point is a question. Given that you're also the developers of the two towers on Princess and University, and I went to your presentation at the Williamsville Association where you were talking about putting in an urban park on the south side of Princess, right across the street from this development. And you didn't talk about that tonight, so I'm wondering if you're still planning to do that, sort of in you're combining your park allotment with the two towers that are down a few blocks with this one. That was my understanding anyway, so I wanted to see that's still accurate. I live about maybe 5 blocks from here, and I walk by there all the time, right? So right now the walk is, it's kind of a wasteland. It doesn't look very good, and I agree with others who have spoken. I really want to have something built there. Hope the thing goes ahead eventually. This location is about halfway between the Metro, which is a large grocery at Barrie and Princess, and Loblaws at Kingston Center, right? You've got a giant Tiger up the street, but it's not really a really large grocery. So I'm wondering if you could look at potentially having a large grocery store as your ground floor commercial. And I note that it's on transit. I actually used to stop there quite often at the corner of Albert and Princess. It's on both express and regular routes. So I'm wondering if we can maybe get an actual bus shelter there. They don't have one right now under the what the chair was just talking about, as far as community benefits. That topic's actually being addressed by staff right now, and I went to an excellent seminar a couple weeks ago on this, really learned a lot. So they're working through kind of the big picture view. So I would put in a word under that category for affordable housing, because Kingston definitely has deficit. It is really needed, and right now there's no requirement, although there's a bill coming through Queen's Park fairly soon that will actually require it. So, and I guess my last point, just sort of following on from that, actually, one more point. If you could consider maybe a section of top floor commercial, with maybe having a really nice restaurant up there. Since you're on the 10th floor, you'd be having an awesome view possibility across the city. There's nothing really like that in that area. There's some stuff downtown that's like that. So something different for the district. And then I'm just following on from the previous speaker's point with the traffic on Frontenac Street. And there's been discussion about this, and actually, sort of cutting off Frontenac Street for traffic, perhaps just to the north of the entrance, which is in behind your project. As I understand it, you're looking to have the traffic go from east to west. You'd come in off Frontenac, you'd go in Park, and then you would exit over onto Albert. That's my understanding of it. So I think that's a good design. But Frontenac, it's a very quiet street, right? You've got, over a few blocks, you got Division, that's the arterial, and it's a settled neighborhood, right? A lot of single-family homes, smaller apartments, and that kind of thing. you're looking to add a lot of traffic there. So in the Green Streets theme, people who live in the area would really like to see the traffic, possibly cut off there, and you would actually turn part of the area maybe into maybe a small park, would maybe have a median down the middle, or while still allowing traffic in. There's all kinds of design possibilities. So those are my comments, and I want to wish you well, with your efforts.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this application? Mm-hmm. We'll just get the microphone on. Yeah, there you go.
I apologize for missing the presentation, but I've been to several for this particular.
Could I just name an address, please?
Sharon DeLine, 14 Durham Street, Kingston, Ontario. I'd like to say that as with other buildings that have been presented, this is a beautiful building, but it doesn't belong on Princess Street in Kingston, Ontario. I know that many people would like 10-story buildings, but you're ruining the ambiance and the historic attraction of Kingston. I just want to say as well that as far as community benefits are concerned, and I did send a letter to someone in the planning department, I have no idea whether or not you saw it. There are no such things as community benefits. There are developer benefits and there are community deficits. This may not cast a light or cast a shadow on the south side of Princess Street, but all of the houses behind it will be affected. And this is a modest income area, and it is rather discriminatory. When you ask for community benefits, it is functioning on the same principle as European traders coming in and offering glass beads to the natives. It's exploitive because the people in the area have no recourse. They're not listened to really by council or planning, and they get nothing from it except an awkward situation. And that's unfortunate because this is a beautiful building, but it doesn't have the room around it. If you look at the homestead buildings on Park Street, they are for people of modest income, but the reason that they're not intrusive is because of the fact that there's a lot of land around them. And so consequently, when you walk by, it's part of the landscape. But this is going to be different because it's creating a tunnel. This one, the other one that this gentleman is also involved in, and maybe you are too, for all I know, as an investor, but the IN8, we're on the Old Springer property, also asking for 10 stories. It's creating a tunnel, and it's like a mountain between a village and the principal path to wherever. It's intrusive. And I just wish that you would take that into consideration. I wish you would go around and walk your dog or do something and get to know the people in the area and get to understand the issues that may occur. And I just want to point out one more thing, but it has to do with the IN8 proposal for the Springer property, but it is symbolic of the kind of intrusion that occurs. St. Luke's Church has a number of solar panels on the roof of their hall. Now, obviously, I don't know for sure, but it might be to save electricity, to generate monies, to keep the church going, for whatever reason. But if that 10-story building goes up on the Springer property, it's going to interfere with the sunlight that they get. And these shadow proposals are always held off. They are always held off by the planning department, so no one can really see what will be happening as far as the effect of these buildings is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this application? Yep.
Jay Patchery, developer in the area. I only have a couple of quick comments. The main concern that I have is with regards to shadow and shadow studies. I would request that the city ask for a peer review of the shadow study. The last shadow study they provided at University Suites was proven to be false and had errors in it. And decisions were made on a shadow study that was inaccurate. And they had to go back and correct it. So I'm not sure if it's the same case in this or not, but we have a large structure across the way that'll have impacts, and I want to make sure that the shadow study that's being considered is appropriate. The other thing that I'd ask people to consider a little bit is the appropriateness of this many bachelor suites. I think the development in general has a lot of positive things, but there's a lot of bachelor suites that are being proposed that are very small, and you have to remember that this is also not going to be owner-occupied, and it's not going to be owner-owned, i.e. it's going to be sold to investors from Toronto or wherever, and we may have an issue when we've got an abundance of bachelors that probably don't demand in the market. So the big question I have is just making sure that the shadow study has a peer review, because I think there's a history from the developer to show that they haven't had them done properly, so I'd ask that that's peer reviewed so that we know exactly what we're dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this development? Have opinions or comments? This will be the last chance for this public meeting to speak, so I will head now to the proponents and ask for a comprehensive list of answers, please.
Great. Thank you for your questions and comments. The first question was with respect to the southern property and our plans for that property. There's currently a long-term lease with Enterprise on the property. Not that long-term, but we have no development plans at this time for that property. I can answer and I'll go into more details because other people asked more specific questions, but we don't have any plans for that property right now. It will remain as is for the immediate future. Lori, you specifically spoke to a concern for parking, and all I can say is that we are also a large or have been in the past and continue to be a landowner and run and own apartments in the city around this area. And we've had the opposite experience. We've paved over beautiful green space in your city and created lots of parking spots, and they've sat empty. And it is a balance. There's a huge financial investment in space and money to build parking spaces, and it's very important you don't build too many, because when they're not used, it's very wasteful. So our studies indicate that we're providing the right amount, and that's why we're proposing this amount. And we think that we have the appropriate amount of parking. So you also expressed a concern about empty apartments, and I heard a concern about affordability. So I can tell you those two things match up very well, because when apartments become empty, they become a lot less expensive to rent. So I think that'll be a welcome problem for the city if you have vacancy. If it does in fact come true, you will have more affordable housing in the city. I heard from our neighbor who we spoke earlier today, Dave, and we are very willing and able to work together with the city and the community to see if we can make his wishes come true on Frontenac Street. Unfortunately, we don't control the city streets. I mean, that's not something I can promise you, because we're not in control of the city streets, but we certainly think it would be wonderful for our development if we could create a bollards, or we could limit access on Frontenac Street, and that could become a biking street or a more green street. We would support it full-heartedly. but it really is the city, and I don't want to put the city in a hard position either, because I know there are sometimes engineering and safety concerns that don't allow this, but if it is possible, we'd be happy to work with the city and make it happen for the community and provide some community benefit dollars towards that. The shadow study, we had a question regarding the shadow study, and I'm just gonna pull it up for everyone to see. And I apologize, we didn't have much time today, but we have provided it. It's available for everyone to see. This is the summer shadow impacts, all the way from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And this is the winter impacts from the same time period. So, you know, we do think that the impacts are very minimal, relatively speaking. There are impacts at the end of the day, you know, when the sun's going down, just like as you would expect, there is a large shadow, but most of them are very reasonable in terms of impacts. This is a wonderful site in terms of shadow impacts to develop this scale of a project. And I can say that, speaking to many comments, so there was a question regarding our other development at Princess and University and the ability to you know, take the parkland contribution from that project and potentially use the land on the south of Princess Street. So we are still in discussions with the City of Kingston and staff to find land in Williamsville so that we're not just dedicating parks, we're not just dedicating cash, we're dedicating actual parkland for that development. And if it's possible, we are working on that. That land is you know, it's really up to the city of what land they want to see that park. But I know that we're trying to make it in Williamsville so that it's an asset for the community when it happens. The transit, we are working. We do have a transit stop in front of the development. We'll be working through that process with site plan to make sure that it's you know, there's a great spot and a shelter of some kind for the community to use that transit space. And do appreciate your comment about a 10th floor or 9th floor restaurant. I hadn't thought of that myself, so we'll definitely think about that one. I'm not sure if the community would be supportive or have the entire community, but we currently don't propose that, but we would consider it. We have tried to bring an anchor grocery tenant to the site for quite some time, and we've gone to all the major groceries, and we didn't get uptake because of the two other large grocery stores that already exist. So we don't anticipate a large grocery store, and we haven't configured it to be a large grocery store. That being said, we expect some you know, convenience commercial to potentially be in one of the commercial spaces that are available to tide people over to not go to the large sites. Ms. DeLine, I received your comments. We've met many times and spoke about the development, and I understand that, you know, community benefit doesn't ring sincere to you. All I can say is that it's a legislation that's brought to us. I don't think that it can do it on itself, can do, you know, the project itself in our view is the community benefit. Building good housing in the community is the community benefit. We disagree on the scale of the development perhaps, but we are doing our very best to make the entire project a community benefit, not simply the token cash requirement that the city asks. And I think that is a very important principle, that, you know, we focus on everything being a community benefit, not just, you know, the stipend amount of money that is requested according to the act. And again, the shadow studies are here for you to see. I know we didn't have it in the formal presentation, but they're available for everyone to look at. And I would speak to Mr. Patry's comment regarding the previous shadow studies. This was a very honest mistake where the times of the daylight savings, was off by an hour. So we were presenting the shadows 1 hour later because of a daylight savings factor. It was a very minor error. We were by no means, trying to misrepresent the shadows. We're happy to have our shadow studies peer reviewed. We believe in sincerity that these are very accurate, but we're happy to have them peer reviewed as necessary. And finally, the bachelor comment from Mr. Patry, we do believe that it's funny when you look at the CMHC data for rental housing in Kingston, they don't even talk about bachelors because the new category of bachelors is just like not applicable because they've never been built. So we don't think there's going to be a problem with having a good, healthy supply of smaller units that in their very nature are more affordable. And I think that it will be good for the Kingston market to have that. So again, thank you everyone for your comments, and we're happy to answer any further questions that you may have.
Thank you. I will return to the committee. Councillor Neal.
Yes. As I understand it, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, there will indeed be a peer review of the information that's been brought forward, given the complexity of this proposal. So things like the shadow study will go through a peer review process. Is that accurate?
Okay, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, the urban design study as well as the traffic impact assessment have gone through peer reviews and are currently undergoing peer reviews. Our peer reviewer looking at the urban design is also looking at the shadow study.
And that will include the shadow study reviewed as well?
Yes.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned before, I think this is very much improved from last year's presentation. I'm particularly hopeful because both our new OP, as I understand it, our Williamsville study, and the zoning recognize Albert, Frontenac, and I believe Alfred as well, as green streets. And we haven't really done anything towards achieving that potential for those streets. And through site plan at development stage, as I understand it, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's an opportunity to achieve some of those principles that are reflected but not yet realized. Is that accurate? Thank you. I see a nod. Thank you. Typically, there is an opportunity for a bump up. And I just want you to know, as much as a bump up at site plan, and you're right in pointing out that so much of the promise of this site, I think you fulfilled the promise with addressing the concerns from the last one, lowering the density and the height, which I applaud you for. But site plan is an opportunity with a bump up for the public to be able to see the process at work. And so I just want to let staff know that, as with all complex developments in Williamsville, I will be requesting a bump up. The other thing, I'm concerned because I know how much, and I've shared this with you, how much kind of positive excitement there was around the idea of getting some green space on the south side of the street on the current enterprise lot. And I know I spoke, I think 3 years ago, with planning about the potential for that site for both parking, for potential future parking structure, but primarily green space. And I would hope that that gets explored in this process as well, because I know that Sydenham Street United, for instance, we're excited about the idea of having parking, some parking available for their parishioners. And I know your company put forward a proposal for a parking structure to address some of your parking concerns at University Suites. So I would hope that that gets explored and perhaps we're able to achieve some green space on Princess Street that would both address your parkland obligation, but also potentially address some of the parking concerns. So I'll leave that with you, and hopefully you and staff can work something out. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? And of course, Planner Sands is the planner on record, and if you've thought of something that you didn't mention, this file is still wide open for comments and questions. And with that, I will close this public meeting, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll call the regular Planning Committee meeting to order and ask for approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Turner, seconded by Councillor Neal. All those in favor? Thank you, that's carried. We have no minutes. I have a declaration of pecuniary interest. You do? Okay. Oh, I will declare my pecuniary interest in the matter of Mack Street, as the owners manage a condominium owned by my mother. We have no delegations or briefings, and our first order of business is address 85 Sydenham Street, zoning bylaw amendment. And we had a public meeting about this a couple of months ago, and it's been through Heritage Committee as well, and we have a recommendation from staff. Moved by Councillor Turner, seconded by Councillor Osanek. We can still vote, we have quorum. Question? All those in favor? Thank you. Just keep moving. Keep going. Item B, zoning bylaw amendment, 1707 through 1715 Executive Avenue. And we have a recommendation from staff for approval. Moved by Councillor Osanek, seconded by Councillor Turner. Questions, comments? All those in favor? Was a thumbs up? Okay, thank you. And next, 270 Frontenac Street, zoning bylaw amendment. And we have a recommendation from staff. Moved by Councillor Turner, seconded by Councillor Osanek. All those in favor? Thank you. And that was it. We have no motions, notices of motion, with no other business. We did get more correspondence in our addendum. The next meeting is Thursday, the 21st. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Turner, Councillor McLaren. All those in favor? Thank you. We're adjourned.